The sedition is being funded to the tune of over $100 million. I'm Jessica Denson, host of Lights On with Jessica Denson, and I recently sat down with this Vice President and Chief Counsel for Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, otherwise known as CREW, who has been tracking the corporations and industry groups that have been reversing their pledges not to fund lawmakers who voted against certifying the election in 2021. They call these lawmakers, including Donald Trump, the Sedition Caucus, and they have been shining a bright light on their reversed commitments to not turn their backs on democracy. Since I sat down with Donald, CREW put out an updated report speaking about the defense industry in particular. It points out that the defense industry has been the one sector that is the most generous with anti-democratic lawmakers. They say of the top 40 companies that have given the most to the Sedition Caucus, 10 belong to the defense industry. Collectively, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, General Dynamics, Honeywell, RTX Corporation, formerly known as Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, L3 Harris Technologies, BAE Systems, and General Atomics and Leidos have given more than $6 million to seditionist lawmakers since January 6th. Now, just since I did that interview with Donald, which we're going to put here for you in just a minute, a lot of people have asked, where is this list? Where can we see this full list of corporations, including those defense contractors? Many other corporations we'll mention in the video, such as Bank of America, Meta, Amazon, and others. The full list is available on CREW's website. They have a tracker that is called "The Sedition is Brought to You by ... It was updated just on September 5th. So we're going to put a link to that list in the description of this video. You can check it anytime. CREW is keeping that list up to date. You can see the long list of corporations and how much they have given to the Sedition Caucus. Here's my interview with Donald Sherman. Remember in the wake of January 6th, when all those corporations committed to not funding the politicians who refused to certify the election? Well, the past 2 years have seen an alarming abandonment of that commitment. Since January of 2023, 28 companies have reversed course on funding the Sedition Caucus, including Microsoft, Meta, PepsiCo, and Bank of America. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington is not letting them off the hook. They continue to shine a light on the corporate actors who are turning over their wallets and turning their backs on democracy. I'm joined by Chief Counsel and Vice President for CREW, Donald Sherman. As always, a pleasure to have you on Lights On. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I really want to know what is the latest with your tracking of this funding of the Sedition Caucus. We really need to pay attention to what's going on here.
So we've been tracking this for quite a while, unfortunately, and while I think there's a lot of folks in the political world who wish that people would stop talking about or thinking about or making them think about January 6th, what we have seen is that $116 million has been donated to the 168 members of the Sedition Caucus from 1,782 companies and industry groups. It's a staggering amount of money to a dozens of members of Congress who refused to certify the 2020 presidential election and worked to overturn it at the behest of the former President Trump.
Can you remind us, I just want to put some names to this. I want to go through some names of the corporations, but can you remind us some names, maybe some familiar ones, some less familiar ones, of those individuals who refused to certify the election in January of 2021?
There are a number of them, as I said. They include former Speaker Kevin McCarthy. They include Jim Jordan, who's the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Virginia Fox, who was on the Education and Workforce Committee. They include Roger Williams, who's on the Small Business Committee. They include Jason Smith, who is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. And so these include a number of rank and filers But I think the reality is that these companies have made the decision to, in many cases, to renege on their previous commitment to uphold democracy by withholding donations from elected officials who supported the overturning of our election, because those politicians are now in positions of power, and there are elections coming up. And so, there isn't any real sort of mystery to what's happening here. I think the soundbite in the aftermath of January 6th, that companies were stopping all of their political donations, or stopping political donations to members of the Sedition Caucus, played well. And I think they hoped that while no one was looking, they could sort of quietly turn back on the faucet. But we've been committed to shining a light on that.
I mentioned a number of those companies. Now, I know there were a number more in part of your report that I read, which talked about this hypocrisy. They were apparently, and you fill me in on the details, part of an AI summit to, kind of be a backstop for democracy in the field of AI on one hand. And then on the flip side, they're opening up their paycheck, their pocketbooks to fund these politicians who do not believe in certifying valid elections and peaceful transfers of power. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of big names in tech, including Microsoft, who's spent $102,500 in support of 36 seditionists, and Meta, which spent $23,000 in support of 16 seditionists, after previously pledging to stop supporting these members. Amazon, which has donated $139,500 to 36 seditionists. I think you see this in a lot of sectors, right? You see folks in the fossil fuel industry, trying to donate their way out of out of the pollution that they contribute to. And I think this is no different. I think obviously the tech industry has a pretty significant role to play in ensuring that AI and other forms of their technology are not used for nefarious purposes, aren't used to undermine our democracy. But it's clear that those priorities only go so far when they are spending money to support politicians, one, who actively sought to overturn an election in part based on election lies fueled on platforms like Meta, or like Facebook, but also to ensure that that politicians are elected that support their bottom line. And so, at the end of the day, as much as these companies, many of these companies pay lip service to the importance of democracy, that commitment only goes so far, and it certainly doesn't go so far as to potentially risk losing, losing losing dollars, or adversely impacting their bottom line.
Well, that's why I'm so grateful that you're doing what you're doing, because, the PR stint that they all rolled out after January 6th appears to be just that. And, just to zoom out, Donald, this seems like it is a byproduct or parallel to the entire trend of trying to whitewash January 6th, to think that somehow time can erase our memories or rewrite history on how severe and deadly that day was. It really is part of a larger trend. I mean, you really want to just take it to the really 30,000 foot view. It's the reason why someone like Donald Trump is even being allowed to run for president again. I don't want to get into the weeds of the 14th Amendment again and why he shouldn't be here as a candidate, but we have, in a egregious fashion, normalized and mainstreamed. I don't want to say mainstreamed it, but rewritten history in regards to what happened on January 6th to even be at a point where our national conversation has once again normalized Donald Trump and his Sedition Caucus allies to be at the helm of one party's politics. Isn't it? Isn't it insane?
Yeah, I mean, it it's really disappointing and frustrating that there are so many in the political and corporate establishment that would simply want us to ignore the fact that we almost lost our democracy in a violent insurrection less than 4 years ago. And I think one of the sort of troubling things about it is that it is obvious that a functioning democracy is necessary, not just to sort of maintaining the United States as we know it, but the to the economic prospects of small businesses and large businesses, including these ones that have reversed course. Right? If a president can overturn an election, then a president has no problem using the awesome power of the federal government to target their enemies. And so, that's the thing that to me is so frustrating and disappointing, is because obviously democracy is important to all Americans, but it is also important to corporate citizens, and its functioning is necessary in order to have a system where these companies are able to thrive. But I think this is a scenario where they have made a political and financial calculus that risking our democracy is worth it, because we didn't actually lose it last time. And it's particularly troubling because we have another election coming up. We have another candidate, or the same candidate, refusing to commit to accepting the results. And these many of these same members casting doubt on the election. And so I don't know what these companies will decide, what they will choose if we have another January 6th on our hands, on January 6th, 2025. But this is not something that American democracy can or should live through again. And it's not something that these companies should want to support. And I'm sure they would say that they, abhor what happened on January 6th. But it's hard to get that message when you continue to fund candidates who enabled the attack on the Capitol, enabled the big lie, enabled former President Trump's effort to overturn a free and fair election.
Yeah, Donald, when you're talking, I'm thinking about countries like Hungary that so many MAGA Republicans have embraced. People like Viktor Orban is a role model, and what he has done in a country like Hungary is turn it into an oligarchy where, the businesses, the corporations that do his bidding are rewarded. If you want to look at this from a very cynical standpoint, it's as though these corporations are, trying to protect themselves on the back end in the event that these politicians get back in power. Of course, the normal political games that we see, but the prospects in this situation are so much more dire because the promises for eroding a normal functioning democracy, where, as you mentioned, corporate citizens are supposed to be part of that healthy ecosystem, is going to be traded out for an oligarchy where Donald Trump and MAGA allies are rewarded to the extent of their loyalty to a leader with authoritarian aims.
Yeah, one of the troubling results of the Citizens United decision was that corporations or extended or afforded the rights of citizens. Well, that goes both ways, right? If corporations want to avail themselves of the rights of citizenship, then they need to be held to the standard of being good citizens. And reneging on their commitment to stop funding members of Congress, stop funding elected officials who were integral to the execution of Donald Trump's insurrection, is a abdication of their responsibility and stated commitment to be good corporate citizens.
All right. Well, we're going to continue to hold them accountable, shine a light. I want to remind everybody they can go to citizensforethics.org to track your tracking of the Sedition Caucus, see where that money is going. You have a long, long list of corporations. We just named a few today. Don't listen to their PR. Watch what they're doing and where they're putting their money. Thank you, as always, for the work that you do and for joining me today on Lights On.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. You can always find Lights On by subscribing to Lights On with Jessica Denson wherever you get your audio podcasts, and by subscribing to my YouTube channel, Jessica Denson. Thanks so much.